So you just bought your first camera and you're pretty confused on where to start in terms of setting it up. So what we're gonna do today is a quick video on how to set your camera up so you can get great photos. Today we're gonna be using the Canon RP to change the settings on, but this can be translated across every single brand of camera. Let's get to it. So after you do the first initial date and time setting, the first setting you should check for your photography is whether you're going to be shooting in RAW or JPEG. RAW is basically a full, unedited, unprocessed version of your photo. Shooting in RAW will allow you to give the most dynamic and high amounts of flexibility when you are editing your photos in post. If you do not edit your photos and want to immediately share your photos with your loved ones or post them online, make sure to leave your camera on JPEG. Most cameras will allow you to shoot RAW and JPEG at the same time, which will allow you to have the best of both worlds. The second setting you should set up for photography is considering which drive mode to pick. So drive mode basically controls how the camera activates the shutter. At the moment, we've got the drive mode on single shot. So when you press down the shutter, it'll only shoot one photo. But if you change it to burst mode, you can hold down the shutter and away it goes. So this is good for moments where you want to be shooting sports or wildlife photography where you'll need a constant fast shooting shutter. However, if you're going to be shooting single shot landscapes or portraits, a single shot drive mode would be more beneficial. There is also other modes in the drive mode, such as using remote control to trigger your camera, as well as self-timer as well for your selfies. The third setting to consider is which mode you'll be using your camera in. Now, most of these cameras will be using 4 modes, and that being, the first being manual, where you can fully adjust your aperture and your shutter speed. And then you've got your 2 priority modes. The first one being aperture priority is where you choose your aperture and the camera chooses the shutter speed for you. And vice versa, if you choose the shutter speed in shutter priority, the camera will choose the aperture for you to compensate for the best exposure. And lastly, there is P, which is called programmed auto, and that's basically just a fully automatic mode that doesn't normally trigger the pop-up flash if your camera does have one. You can trigger the pop-up flash though if you just press the button on the side and it'll pop up and compensate with some flash. Lastly, choosing the right autofocus settings is crucial in getting the right photo. So your camera does come with various types of autofocus settings. The first being autofocus single, which focuses on one single zone in the photo. And then there's autofocus continuous, which follows your subject when you lock on a point on them. This is crucial for if you want to be doing video and you want to track, or if you're going to be doing sports or any fast moving subject and really want to nail that focus down. To assist with that as well, there are specific focus areas you can choose in your camera. The first being single point, where your focus will always just be focused on that single point. And then you've got your zone modes. So you've got a wide area, which uses all the focus points across the plane. And then you have center, which focuses on the center points in the plane. So now I'm just going to give you a couple scenarios just to help translate it out for you. So firstly, if I'm shooting a landscape, I'll put my camera into manual because I like to choose my aperture and choose longer shutter speeds. Then what I'll do is I'll choose a RAW file format because I will want to be pulling my highlights and shadows later in post-processing. And then shooting autofocus wise, I'll only be using a single point in the landscape scene as there's not really anything changing as such. And I will go for a single point just so I nail that shot every time. For a sports scenario, I'll be shooting a lot differently. So I'll be putting my camera into shutter priority as I don't really have time to be changing my aperture as much. So I'm going to be shooting at those higher shutter speeds, which I've chosen. In addition to that as well, I will be shooting RAW, but in some scenarios, if I'm going to be nailing 10 frames per second bursts and won't have time for my memory card to catch up to me, I'll probably be shooting JPEG to save some time. In terms of the autofocus, I will be shooting at a autofocus continuous and probably at a wider zone because I know my subjects will be flying in left and right of the frame. And if I'm shooting portraits for social, what I'll do is I'll have my camera set on JPEG so I can immediately send the photos straight from my camera to my phone, or translate it straight to my laptop and share it instantly. I'll put my camera into aperture priority so I can choose the depth of field that I want to shoot. And then in terms of autofocus, depending on my camera, I'll be shooting at a autofocus single or autofocus continuous if it does have facial tracking or eye autofocus features available, such as in most mirrorless cameras out on the market today. If you want to learn further, we offer free one-on-one workshops which you can contact our store via our phone number to book in every Saturday. In addition to that as well, we do run specialized workshops which vary from Fundamental 101 to advanced classes, which links to those events are in our description below. And if you were a bit confused about what settings we hashed out today, click the next video to learn more.